I read Once Upon a Dream by Disney. Now, this is part of the Twisted Tale series, which I did not even know was a thing, but apparently there are a lot of these stories. I have this one, and I also have As Old as Time, and I wanted to get a whole new world because it's a Aladdin story, and I really like Aladdin story, but this one was not available, so there was this one and As Old as Time. And apparently, they also have a villain series. There are villain tales as well, which is also something that I was not aware of. So, this one specifically, Once Upon a Dream, is about Sleeping Beauty. And the idea is that the prince kissed the Sleeping Beauty and she did not wake up. But instead, the prince also fell asleep, and then they went into her dream world, and then they realized that Maleficent is controlling this dream world. So I was excited to read this, but this is a book that's written for children, and this is the book that wasn't really enjoyable for me at all. Like, um, these characters are written like teenagers, but they're written like very annoying and cringy teenagers. And the rest of the story was fine, like the progress of the story was fine. But overall, I was pretty bored while reading this story, and I just wanted it to get over real fast. I did finish reading it, and I'm proud of myself for that. But overall, I did not like it that much. I still have this one, Oldest Time, which is about Belle. So, if Belle's mother cursed the beast, is the idea of this book. So, let me see if I like this book, because if I like this one, then I might invest in A Whole New World. But if I don't like it at all, then I'll probably just not read this series ever again. This month, I also read Pride and Prejudice, which is a surprise for me because I always thought of myself as someone who does not read classics. But then I thought that I should try reading some, and this was one of those that I was kind of scared to read, mostly because, the Old English language, and I thought it won't be that fun. And at some point, it was an issue trying to understand what they're trying to speak, especially like right in the beginning. There's a part where Elizabeth is at Mr. Bingley's house, and she and Mr. Darcy are having a conversation, and they're having a back and forth, and some kind of banter is happening. And I read that, and I didn't really understand any of it. I didn't understand if I was supposed to read it as banter, if I was supposed to read it as flirting, if I was supposed to read it as annoyance. That was confusing. But the rest of the book was actually pretty easy to understand. I would say though, I was bored for about halfway through the book. Like, a lot of things happen in the book, but it didn't really become interesting to me up until the halfway, or a little more than that, up until that point where Mr. Darcy basically confesses. That is when things actually got interesting for me, because he confesses, she rips him a new one, then he comes back with a letter explaining all of his actions, and then she is forced to reevaluate her stance on Mr. Darcy. And I thought that was where the book started becoming more interesting. I really liked the book from that point onwards, but before that, up until that point, it was actually kind of boring and kind of draggy, but the payoff was worth it. The ending was worth it. I like how they got married in the end. More romance stories should just end with the leads getting married. I think we need this. Um I have to say though that I have never read Pride and Prejudice, but I also never watched any of the movie adaptations. And now that I have read the book and I like the book, I think I would like to go now and try and see if I end up liking the movie adaptations as well. Uh, because you never know, you might find more stuff that I like. This month, I also read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I do not know how you pronounce that name, but whatever. Um, I had never read this book as a child. This is the first time I'm reading this book, and I'm reading it as an adult. But overall, this was a book that was enjoyable to me. Even as an adult, I could really enjoy this book. It was a very simple book, very simple story, very simple characters, just boys being boys and doing crazy stuff. It was fun to read this. Kind of felt like watching an episode of an old TV show, where certain things happen every episode and you're just having fun while watching the series, and then the series ends and you're like, oh, was that it? I would like more adventures. This book is kind of like that. Overall, this book was like really nice. I had fun reading it. And the book has pictures, which is amazing because more books should have pictures. Pictures are fun. This month, I also read the romance novel Will You Still Love Me by Ravinder Singh. Um, Now, I have to say, this was a very simple story. It's this idea that Lavanya and Rajveer, they meet, they fall in love, and then something happens, and Rajveer is supposed to overcome the trauma of what happens. Um, I have to say that this was a good love story. Like, the chemistry was really good in the beginning. Like, the banter was written well, the dates were written well. I like how they got together. I really felt that the leads really liked each other, and that was nice. Uh, about the quote unquote tragedy that is supposed to happen, it's very obvious what the tragedy is going to be. Like, up by the time you're halfway into the book, you know where this book is going. So it's a pretty predictable book, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's actually pretty good. It's an okay read. Um, it's I did have one problem though, because the one who makes the mistake is Rajveer, and the one who pays the price of that mistake is Lavanya. And the book kind of ends with Lavanya asking Rajveer if will you still love me? And at that point, I thought maybe, you know, what Rajveer needs is a jail sentence and not unconditional love. Um, so the ending was kind of a bit too on the nose for me, and that was the only thing that I did not enjoy. But the rest of the book was pretty good. It was pretty fun. So overall, this was an okay book, everything considered. So, in this way, October was a very, if I have to say it, it was a 50-50 month for me. I read 4 books, and then I had 2 books which I liked, and then I had 2 books which I didn't like. I read 2 books which were clearly meant for kids. I liked one, I disliked one, and then I read 2 books which were um, meant for a larger audience, and I liked one, and I disliked one. I read a classic, which is not something I read very often, and I read what is supposed to be part of a classic. I liked one, I did not like one. So it was a very cut in the middle kind of month. I had books that I liked, books that bored me, and that is fascinating. Now the question is, what will happen in November? What will I end up reading in November?